Hello, hello! Thank you so much for joining me today. This video is going to be a full face of Flower Beauty, kind of a brand overview. I did use a few of these products in a first impressions video I did a couple months ago. I've had more time to play with these products, and so I feel like I can give better reviews, and also I just want to show you everything in action. I look a little bit jarring right now because I have foundation on my face, but I don't have concealer or anything else on. So let's move on with the first product, and that is their color corrector. This is the Chill Out Soothing Color Corrector in the shade Light Peach. I don't know if this is the lightest shade or the second to lightest shade. At first you might find that it's a bit thick or a little bit dry, like the texture of it is, but I don't find that it makes my under eyes feel dry. And the way I use this is I take my fingernail and I take the top part of it, the back, and I just scoop out a little bit, and then I put that between two of my fingers and I warm it up so that it's nice and creamy, and then I just tap it under the entirety of my under eye. And I make sure to use the pads of my fingers to create a really thin layer and really warm it up and melt it into my skin. So even though it does look a bit dark in the pot, when I do let it melt in with my skin, I don't find it looks as stark. Really quickly, I'm going to go in with my concealer and with my eyeshadow primer, just because I don't have Flower Beauty products for those categories, so I'll do those off camera really quick. Okay, so I finished my concealer and my eyeshadow primer. I will have all of the products I'm using in the description box, so if you're curious what other products I'm using in my makeup look today that aren't Flower Beauty, you can find that down there. I'm going to use some of the mattifying loose powder to set my under eyes and to set my eyeshadow primer. This is one of those HD, very translucent, thin, finely milled powders, which I really love. I do prefer that formula over other powders. I find that everything else kind of just looks too heavy on me, and I really only use powder to set my cream products so that I can put powder products on top and it'll be smooth, and then I usually use a setting spray to take down the powdery look anyway. So it's kind of something I use to build my makeup look and not necessarily something I use as like a finishing touch. So I'm just going to grab some of that with this Real Techniques setting brush and use that to lightly set both my eyelids and my under eyes. And I mentioned in that first impressions video that I don't love how big the packaging is. It's very bulky and sometimes difficult to get the lid back on. It has to be perfectly lined up in order to go back on. But you really don't get a ton of product, and then this packaging is huge. So I'm not a big fan of that, but the product inside I do really like. A little heads up, if you're using this powder to set your under eyes, it's not a brightening powder. It really doesn't have any pigment to it. So if you like to use something to set your under eyes that is brightening or even provides even more coverage, this obviously isn't going to be the right product for that. Next, I'm going to work on cheek products. I do have the highlighter glaze here. This is in the shade Stunner. I think they do have one more shade that's darker than this. And this is one of those products that doesn't have a lot of base pigment, and it's more of a glossy formula or like a thicker balm. So when you put it on the high points of your face, it creates a really creamy, natural look. So it's kind of like all reflect. And I did try to use this the way I see other people using it in that first impressions video, where I took a sponge and I just put it on top of my foundation on my cheekbones, and it did look really pretty. But I don't like the sensation of having something sticky on my cheeks. Even when I use cream products, which I have been using a lot more lately, I like to set them with the powder. And so this product doesn't really work for someone like me because I don't like just leaving it sticky on my face. I feel like I have to set it with the powder, which can change the effect and the look of the product. So I'm not going to use it that way today. I've actually been really loving using it as a mixer. If you can see, I've started digging out a portion of the product. The way I've been really enjoying using it lately is taking a bullet lipstick or a liquid lipstick, putting a little bit of that on the back of my hand, and then taking some of this and mixing it in with it to take down the pigment a little bit so it's not super harsh on my cheeks, and also to add a really nice sheen. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to take some of the lipstick from their Petal Pout collection. This is in the shade Naked Blush 020. And this is a really pretty just nude color. I'm going to put some of this on the back of my hand, and then I'm just going to scrape the tiniest amount, like a fourth of a pea size, and I'm going to mix that in. And I'm going to mix those together and use the bottom of a beauty blender to pat that into my cheeks, making sure to keep it like really high. And I know that looks a bit stark right now, but trust me, it blends out really beautifully. Mixing these two creates a really beautiful flush on the cheeks. It also adds a little bit of a glow, if you can see that. And it also creates a beautiful base for me to build the blush that I'll be putting on top of it. I'm really happy to have found a way to make this product work in a way that I really enjoy. I was a little bit worried when I first used it and realized it felt sticky. I didn't really like that at all, but using it as a mixer and then setting with powder later still gives me a little bit of that glow without having the sticky feeling. So I'm really glad to have found a way to repurpose this. And same with the lipstick. I'll talk more later about why I don't like this on my lips. So I'm glad that it makes such a beautiful cream blush color. So next I'm going to take that same powder, the mattifying powder, and I'm going to use that to set my entire face. They do have another powder on their website. I think it's more illuminating or just more of a natural finish. So I have the mattifying version, but if you want something that's a little bit less mattifying, then there is a version like that for you on the website. So I'm going to put on the highlighter and blush next, and I have the Shimmer and Strobe Highlighting Palette from Flower Beauty. This is the lighter version of the two, and I do have one of their flower pots, which is in the shade Spiced Petal. This is a beautiful nude color for me, a bit rosy, slightly peachy as well. I have used this several times. I think it's a beautiful blush. I had wanted to get one of these flower pots when they first released a while ago, but they only had 3 or 4 shades and none of them really spoke to me. I'm glad I waited for them to release more shades because I did end up getting one that really works well for me, so I'm glad I waited. One thing I like to do with highlighters that are a little bit more intense, because these are very intense highlighters, is I like to apply the highlighter first and make sure it's nice and blended out, and then put blush on top so that it's less stripy, less stark. I remember hearing Shan XO do something like that years ago in one of her videos, and it just stuck with me. And I'm going to focus mainly on this middle shade, the slightly pinkier one. I'm going to put that on this little angled brush, focus that on the tops of my cheekbones. I also like to apply it around my brow bone as well, and just really buff it in all around. Very, very I mean, this is definitely not like a natural highlight by any means. Even if you do buff it in, it has a really beautiful reflect. I love highlighters like this. And I love that there are 3 different undertones in this palette. So if I did want to deepen it up a little bit, I could use that deeper gold color. If I wanted something more icy, more champagne, I could go for the middle, or I can mix them to get the type of effect that I'm looking for. And I do like to put a little bit on the top of my nose as well. Just really get in there. I'm gonna wipe off that brush a little bit and then go in with the flower pots and kind of mimicking the same placement, making sure I focus on the top of my cheeks. I don't have any bronzer or brow products from Flower Beauty, so I'm going to quickly apply those off camera. Alright, so next I'm going to use the Seal the Deal Long Lasting Setting Spray, the matte finish version. When I used this in that first impressions video, I noted that the perfumey scent of this is incredibly strong, and I didn't like that. I also didn't like that it left a couple little dots on my face. I know some people absolutely hate that. I have found some ways to work around those issues though. If you do shake it a lot before you spray it, it does reduce the amount of dots that you get. And if I do see 1 or 2 dots on my face, I will just dab them out with my sponge. Not really a big deal to me. I know some people care about that a lot more, so just keep that in mind. With the perfumey scent, what I do is I hold my breath while I spray it, and then I use just like any postcard or coupon code that I get in the mail, and I just kind of fan it away, and it kind of fans the perfumey scent away from me. The scent does dissipate incredibly quickly, so that is a plus, and it makes it a lot better for me to use, knowing that the perfumey scent isn't gonna stick around all day. I have been using the setting spray more regularly and really liking it, and I think the reason I've been loving it so much is because I've been panning the e.l.f. Matte Magic Mist Inset Setting Spray, and I don't really find that this helps make my makeup last much longer or keep me from getting oily throughout the day, which is one of the reasons why I like to use setting sprays. Obviously it does a great job at setting the powder after I'm finished, but it doesn't really have any other effects, so whenever I switch it up and use this every once in a while, I do definitely see a difference. But overall, I have really been enjoying using it, and the way I've learned to use it, because it does have a very fine mist, is to get a little bit closer to my face and slowly push the nozzle down. So I'm slowly spraying at certain parts of my face So I'm not using like 80 sprays just to feel like my face is covered. I'm being a little bit more targeted with it. And I remember, was it Scandinavia? Some setting spray company like kind of coined that, like doing the cross and then doing an X over your face to make sure your whole face was covered. And I feel like that's kind of the same thing, just making sure you got the entire face going. I kind of just go in like diagonal stripes until I feel like my face is covered enough. All right, now for eyeshadow, I do have one palette from Flower Beauty. It's the Jungle Lights palette, and I have played around with that wild shade a ton, this mauve shade in the corner, but I want to play with something different, and surprisingly, I haven't used this olive green yet. This is in the shade Anaconda, which is usually the shade I gravitate towards in palettes, but I've just really been loving that mauve shade, so I'm going to use the olive shade today. This is a very creamy formula. I like to use this palette as a topper palette. I'll build a look somewhere else with like mattes and everything, and then I'll take this and just pat it on the center of the lid or all over the lid to add a little bit something extra. Today I'm just going to do a one and done eyeshadow look, which I don't really do that often. It's not very like me to do that, but I'm going to try it today. So I have this dual-sided ABH brush, and I do have like a fluffy crease brush, but I think the majority of the way I'm going to get the eyeshadow on my eyes is just using my fingers. I find using my fingers with most shimmery shades is the way to go. So I'm just gonna pat this at first on all over my lid, trying to be really careful to not get a ton of fallout. So that's just what one layer looks like. I'm gonna do the same on the other eye. I'm not really getting any fallout just yet, so that's good. That's a good sign. I am gonna go in a little bit with that crease brush and just better blend it above my crease. It is blending really nicely, which is good. And sometimes when you blend out olive shades, if you blend it too much, if it has like a grayish base or like a darkened base, it really just shows that and doesn't really pull as olive. I find that this is still keeping that olive undertone, which is nice. I'm gonna go in with that ABH brush and grab a little bit and just make sure I'm covering my entire lid, maybe build it up a little bit to get more of that greeny gold reflect. I'm getting very, very minimal fallout, so that's fantastic. I really didn't even get any fallout on this side, just a little bit on this side. I'm gonna go in with a flatter brush and run this along the lower lash line as well. And I do want to try using it wet to see if that'll take it up a notch at all, so I just wet it with a little bit of this Morphe mist. I'm just gonna go over on my lid to see if that changes anything. Ooh. It does make it slightly more green, a little bit more pigmented. I mean, I find that to be the case with most shimmery eyeshadows. If you wet it, it will take it up a notch, so that's really good to know. I'm just gonna go in with like a clean, fluffy brush and go through, make sure there's no harsh edges. I'm gonna curl my lashes and do some pencil liner, just something really simple, and then I'll come back and show you the mascara. Okay, so the mascara I have to talk about is the Lash Warrior Princess Mascara. I have used the Lash Warrior Mascara in the past, and I didn't like that at all. The brush was fine. It was a plastic bristle brush. I also didn't like the formula. It was very wet, and it's nice because it didn't clump at all, but it also just never really built up on itself, and it did feel kind of heavy on my lashes as well. So that one I didn't really like. I heard better things about the Lash Warrior Princess. The brush is definitely different. It looks a lot more like the Too Faced Better Than Sex mascara wand. This is my first time using it, so this one is more of a first impressions. But I find with mascaras, I can't really give a good review of those until I talk about them in like my empties videos, once I've used it through the entirety of its like lifetime. So I do have my lashes curled a little bit. I'm just gonna go through and see how this works. Okay, it's definitely not as wet of a formula as the Lash Warrior Mascara, which, like I said, I really don't like how wet that formula was, so this is like already better. With how the bristles are, I do find that it's like catching all the little hairs, the little baby blonde hairs that I have, and it is coating them nicely without making them too thick, and it's not clumping them up. So I really like that. And I do feel like it has a little bit of a lifting effect as well. Like it's drying as it coats the lash and helps it stand up better. So that's nice. That's usually something that my lashes need help with. So that's just one coat on one eye versus nothing on the other eye. I do find that I prefer wands that are a little bit tapered just because I worry with the wand being so big and the bristles being a little bit longer that when I try to get in the inner corner of my eye, I'm gonna like hit the skin next to it, next on the bridge of my nose, and create a little bit of a mess. So I'm trying to be like super aware of that and make sure not to accidentally get mascara everywhere. So that's not my favorite. So that's what that looks like. Not really like changing my life or anything, but it is a really pretty formula so far. I'm gonna let that dry for a second and then apply a second coat and see how it builds on itself. Okay, I really like that. Definitely not a clumpy formula, so if you're the type of person who likes to get really thick lashes from mascaras, I think this one is just slightly more feathery. Of course, if you have thicker lashes than me, you'll probably get better results. But yeah, this is building really nicely. And I like that it does catch those smaller blonde hairs that I have that are a little bit harder to get. I am going to put on some lip liner before I put on my lipstick just because it's a personal preference. I like to make my top lip a little bit more symmetrical, and that's something I do before I put on any lipstick. Okay, so I don't love the formula of this lipstick, which is a shame because it is a beautiful color. If you can see, it's just like slightly deeper than my natural lip, and it's just so pretty. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see what I mean, but when I rub my lips together, it kind of just sits in the lines in a really weird way, and it does feel quite dry. I don't know if this is necessarily from their matte formula or what, but even for being a matte lipstick, it just feels drying and has a little bit of like a waxy feel too, which is something that was echoed in the comments, I believe in my Shop My Stash video or in one of the videos where I talked about this lipstick. It's a real shame because this is such a beautiful color. It's something I would wear all the time with any look just because it is so close to my natural lip color. So this is the final look. I really like how it turned out. I do like using this palette as like a one eyeshadow look. I do think that creates a pretty look. It's just not really in my nature to only reach for one eyeshadow when I am doing an eyeshadow look. Even if it's a really simple look, I still like to use mattes and something on the inner corner. Oh, you know what? That's what I'll do. I'll use one of the lighter shades on my inner corner now that I'm here. I'm going to use this lightest shade here. This is Paradise. And I'm going to put that on the inner corner. I bet that's going to be really pretty because it's a creamier formula, so I think it'll build really nicely. It's a little crumbly on the inner corner, but that definitely is a nice pop. So that is the final look, and I am wearing like my pajama top. I just didn't feel like changing, and I also like that it has flowers on it, so I think it's very appropriate for the brand video that we're doing today. In general, I would say the majority of the products from this brand I have really enjoyed. I'm having a bit of an issue with the formula of this lipstick. If anyone knows of a dupe for this color, please let me know. But is there anything else from the Flower Beauty line that you think I should try? I would be interested to maybe get one of those Petal Pout lip masks. They do seem to be very heavily scented, like different fruits, and I think some of them also have glitter in them, so that's kind of keeping me back from getting one. And of course, if there are any other brands like this, especially drugstore brands that you would like to see me do a version of this, I would like to find more drugstore brands that have a really good shade range for foundations. But in the meantime, that's everything I have. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!